Hello and welcome to episode number 12, the dozenth episode of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And we got a busy one today. We'll be interviewing Conor to talk about the 2-year anniversary of a big trade. And then we'll be inviting Erik on to do a season preview.
Yep.
Off-season preview, rather.
Yep. WWE SmackDown. Erik v. Cam. I'm excited to get those segments rolling. Let's start off by talking about the big trade that happened this week. Erik traded Clayton and Jake's 2021 first-round pick, which is the third overall pick in this year's draft, to Benintendi's Chicken Tendies for Royce Lewis. So Cam, I feel like I usually start off by giving my opinion, so I want to mix it up a bit. What are your thoughts on this deal?
So I know the two of us have drastically different opinions, if the Slack is anything to go by, but it feels weird to kind of, if Erik is my rival, to kind of praise a move that my rival is making. But I think Erik did very well here. I think it's pretty simple. I would rather have Royce Lewis than the third overall pick in the draft. I think Royce Lewis is a great prospect, and I think he is a better prospect than presumably Austin Martin is the guy who would be going there. I'm not, there's no guarantee, but presumably that is who Alex would want third. He's kind of he's a consensus top 3 guy. And if we are assuming Garrett Crochet goes 2, who knows? But if Austin Martin goes 2, then that trade looks even better for Erik, because who's the third best prospect? Max Meyer, Zach Veen. I'd much rather have Royce Lewis than those guys. Lewis is a former number 1 pick. He's proven himself in the minors. His stock has kind of stayed consistently high. And yeah, I mean, just looking at top prospect lists on MLB.com, Royce Lewis is 7th and Martin is down at 16. So they're both good prospects, but there is a gap there. And on Fangraphs, Royce Lewis is 12th and Austin Martin is all the way down at, it looks like, 50th. So I just think if it's Austin Martin versus Royce Lewis, and that's what it appears to be 2 months out from the draft, then I would rather have Royce Lewis. Simple as that.
So from my perspective, I think that this trade makes sense for both sides given what they want. I think that Erik really likes Royce Lewis, and he thinks that Royce Lewis can come up and be an immediate contributor this year versus having to wait for that draft pick to potentially become a contributor. So if that's Erik's perspective on that, I get why he makes this trade. I get why Alex and Zach want to make this trade too. And I think you kind of have to look a little bit beyond just the prospect rankings here. I won't deny that Royce Lewis has all the tools and all the upside in the world. But at some point, the results matter. He had I pulled up his Fangraphs page here. In 2018, once he reached high A, he had a 110 WRC plus, 255 average, 327 OBP, 399 slugging. Nothing special. And then in 2019, I mean, those numbers cratered: 238 average, 289 OBP, 376 slugging, and high A. And keep in mind, he was repeating in high A after being there in 2018, so those numbers are worse. And when he got bumped up to double A, much of the same: 231 average, 291 OBP, 358 slugging for an 88 WRC plus. So really, the last time that he has hit like a solidly like above average top prospect like hitter was in 2018 when he was in single A. So this almost kind of reminds me a bit. I was telling Alex yesterday, like because he's looking to sell Brendan Rodgers. I'm like, this is what Brendan Rodgers looked like the year before. His value was kind of like at a little bit of a high, but there was some like concerns there. And then, a year later, when things haven't really, worked out for Brendan Rodgers, his value has cratered. I'm not saying Lewis is going to come up to the majors and have a negative 10 WRC plus like Rodgers did this year, but I have a hard time justifying, giving up a top 3 pick to get him. I think that the price should have been a bit lower given Lewis's recent struggles and his performance. And, when I saw this trade initially, I thought that Erik was giving up like the 5th or 6th overall pick. I think that would have been maybe more of a fair value, but a top 3 pick, I have a bit of a hard time stomaching that. If Erik would have given up the 7th or 8th overall picks, which he also owned in the first round, I think I would have been more open to calling this a win for him. But it seems like he bought a player whose value was a bit low at a higher price. So I won't argue with this trade from either perspective. I get why both sides made it. It is a little telling, in my opinion, that Zach, as a Twins fan, was so ready to move on from Royce and Lewis. I guess I don't share the same enthusiasm for Royce Lewis that Erik does, and therefore I side with Alex and Zach here. That being said, I don't think it's like a wide gap. I don't think like one side clearly just like won this trade over the other, and there's obviously a lot of variables here in predicting how these prospects are going to do. But like I said, I think the farm system rankings or the prospect list rankings are one thing, but it's a whole nother thing when you're looking at the actual performance and seeing if this player is going to come up and really make an impact. If Royce Lewis comes up in his first 150 at-bats, he struggles and Erik can't devote him to the minors, I wonder what Erik's going to do. If your goal is to win now, and especially in the playoffs, it's hard to dedicate a roster spot to someone who's not really contributing. And if Royce Lewis isn't really, majorly contributing, maybe he's serving as more of a kind of a bench or utility guy for the Twins, or maybe, he has this like 280, 290 OBP that he had in the minors in 2019. I think that really makes things tricky for Erik. So I think that there is a big kind of gamble associated there as well. So,
yeah, I guess it all depends on your opinion of Royce Lewis.
Yeah.
But really, you could say that same thing about whoever Alex and Zach draft number 3 in the draft. And then the other thing I wanted to say, I did trade him away once, so it's not like I'm going to bang on pots and pans and say Royce Lewis is the greatest. But, he didn't have the best numbers in the minors, but we also haven't seen any numbers in the minors from any guy who got drafted last year. We are assuming it's Austin Martin, but maybe it's someone else. Who knows what they're going to do in their first minor league season, because we haven't seen them. So we have numbers that are visible to the public on Royce Lewis.
Yeah, but it's not like those numbers are all that impressive. So, I guess Royce Lewis offers a little more stability because you can kind of project him a little more. And I know that, one of your issues with, and like one of the reasons you said you traded out of this year's draft was just the inability to kind of see these players and really gauge their value due to the pandemic. But, I'd rather maybe take a gamble on someone who's very highly rated and, someone I really like at the top of the draft versus someone who maybe we've looked at and just been like, I don't know. Like I mentioned earlier, with Royce Lewis, all the tools are there. There's no question about that. He could potentially be a franchise player just with the upside that he possesses. But if you look deeper and just look into, a lot of these articles about him are how like the swing is broken. The swing is not very good. It's not a swing in the major leagues that can really hold up. And I know that you can correct a swing, but, that's not the easiest thing to do. And, if that swing hasn't really proven to be that effective past the single A level, I don't know if he's just magically going to flip the switch and he'll be able to come up to the majors and just be effective. I think that this is something that's going to take a while. And, he had time in 2020 and the overflow camp to maybe work on it, but that doesn't really replace kind of having some of these minor league at bats and kind of getting some of the practice with that swinging live game action. So it's tricky,
he only played 30 games above single A. He's 21. He's the number 7 prospect in the league. It's insane to say he's broken right now.
No, it's not to say that he's broken, but I think that, at some point, the results matter, and the kind of his profile matters when you're kind of looking at the swing and some of the like the tangible kind of metrics here. You know, upside is not really tangible. You know, upside and the makeup and all of that are just things that you like, and it's a reason why he's a highly ranked prospect. But at some point, the results have to be there. I mean, you know as well as I have, there's been so many prospects that have been so hyped up because they have all the tools to be a successful major leaguer, and they just can't harness them. So I wonder if this might be a case of that. I'm not saying that he should be given up on. I'm not saying that he's, you know, just totally screwed or anything. You know, like you said, he's still very young. He could still get it together, but I'm at least a little worried. It's also telling that I feel like the league as a whole just hasn't really valued him that highly. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people in this league who, you know, just don't seem to be that high on him. So, you know, we'll see. I know I did pose the question to you, like, would you have done this trade? And you said yes. I know that I've talked to others like Zane, and they're like, there's no way in hell that he would have done this unless he knew that he could have immediately flipped Royce Lewis in a deal. And I know I was kind of in that same boat. I was talking about getting Royce Lewis from Alex as well, but only would have done it if I could have flipped him immediately or done it as part of a 3-team deal where I wasn't getting Lewis. So, you know, I don't know. I think given how the league values him, I just don't know if Erik needed to give up the 3rd overall pick to get him.
I guess we'll never really know. But
Well,
yeah,
actually,
there were a couple.
Actually, we do know. I'll say one more thing on this, and then we can move on. Erik did ask Alex, like, if I would have offered the 7th or 8th overall pick instead of number 3, would you have done it? And Alex said he wouldn't have. So there you go. I guess number 3 was the price that needed to be paid, but I still think it's a bit of an overpay. But yeah, we can move on here. I think we've kind of dissected this trade quite a bit.
Into the ground, certainly.
Into the ground. I hope if Erik and Alex are listening to this, they're thoroughly entertained by our analysis of their trade.
Yeah, but that was really the only big thing that did happen in the league this week. But there were a couple of interesting ad drops. First of all, Andrew dropped Jurickson Profar from his team, and the EBO immediately scooped him up. And you had heard that Zane was very eager to pick him up and surprised that he'd been dropped?
Yeah, I chatted Zane, when was it, yesterday? I think yesterday was when he got picked up, and I was like, nice Profar ad, and he was pretty surprised that Profar had been dropped, and I agree with him. You know, Profar is going to be 28 on opening day, 7 homers, 7 stolen bases in a shortened season. He only played 56 games and put up those numbers. And those stolen base numbers are particularly interesting because his career high was 10 that he put up in 146 games. 278 average, 343 OBP. That's pretty solid. 428 slugging. So that's a 111 WRC plus, and he's got second and outfield eligibility going into next year. So that's a pretty valuable player. I know he's coming off kind of a down 2019, but even in 2019 and in 2018, he posted 20 homer, 10 stolen base seasons. And last year, I guess the 301 OBP isn't good, but it was kind of saddled by 218 BABIP, which kind of, I guess, deflated his batting average a bit. But if I have a player and I'm Andrew who's young, who's going to probably have a 330-ish OBP and is capable of putting up like 20 homer, 10 stolen base-ish season with a little more upside and multi-positional value, I'd rather own him than like Adam Duvall. So I thought that this was a great pickup for EBO, kind of given where they're at, you know, kind of needing to fill out that last bench spot. But I don't know. I guess I was a little surprised that Andrew dropped him. I guess one last thing I'll say is the Padres, I think, stole the most bases. They're one of the more trigger-happy teams there. Profar's a free agent. If he leaves, maybe those stolen base numbers go down. But I don't think that there's a reason to suggest then that totally tanks his value.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a surprising move by Andrew to cut him when he's got guys. First of all, in the lineup, I'd rather cut M-SABR or Duvall, and he's also got 8 pitchers on his bench. Certainly, certainly you'd rather have Profar than Rowan Wick or Shane Green, Scott Oberg, who didn't even pitch this year. I'm really surprised by this move. Zane did a good job to scoop up Profar when he did, because I like him. I mean, he never fully lived up to his top prospect status, but he's a solid major leaguer. He's got a high walk rate. He's going to steal a decent number of bases, and really a decent number is all you need. And he's got okay power. And with the multi-position eligibility, I think he's a really decent fantasy asset that Andrew should have held on to.
Yeah, and even if he didn't want to hold on to him, let me ask your opinion here. If Andrew would have put Jerks and Profar into trade block, would you have inquired on him and potentially given up something of value to get him?
I'd have to think about that. I'm not sure where Profar fits onto my team in particular, but I'd certainly hear offers if the price is right.
Well, generally, though, let's say you had a need for a bat.
Yeah, I mean, I'd give up.
Yeah,
maybe a third rounder, a high third rounder, second rounder, maybe a prospect. I would certainly give something of value.
That's what I was thinking. If I still had the 23rd overall pick, which I recently traded away for JD Davis, and Profar was on the block, and I really needed kind of that last bench bat to fill out the roster, I could have seen myself maybe offering up 23 for Profar. I don't know if I would have pulled the trigger on it, because there's obviously some bench bats I like better. But I think for a lot of teams in this league, I think they would have given up a pick to go out and get him. But while we're on the topic of EBO's team, I know we're going to – I know it's a bit unplanned here, but I just got the notification that David Dahl signed with the Rangers for 1 year and $3 million. Kind of a hat tip to Sully for posting that in the Slack. I figure while we're on the topic of EBO's bench, we might want to kind of talk about that. I know we mentioned him on the last podcast for the non-tenders for the Rockies, but any thoughts on that move?
Yeah, we, interestingly enough, talked about Dahl more than any other non-tendered guy, which is weird because he's not the most interesting one. But yeah, he now has a place. He was scooped up very quickly by the Rangers, who, looking at their outfield right now, I think he should slot in pretty nicely. It could, interestingly enough, Leody Taveras and Willie Calhoun, guys that I have on this podcast expressed my dislike for, they both could be in trouble. They're both really bad. Or maybe Dahl is the one who gets left out as the fourth outfielder, because Joey Gallo isn't going anywhere unless he moves back to the infield. There could be a lot of moving parts here, especially now that Nate Lowe is projected to be the starting first baseman. It seems like an interesting fit, and I don't know what the Rangers are going to do now.
Yeah, if I had to predict this right now, I would say that Dahl would be ticketed to play in left field most days, with Taveras in center, Gallo in right field, and Willie Calhoun getting quite a few at-bats at DH. I think Sherton, Apostle, Nick Solak, and others could be definitely getting to the playing mix. Elvis Andrus, who has recently been demoted to a utility role, I'm sure is not just going to totally disappear. But I think from a playing time perspective, this is good. I think that this helps EBO. And literally, as we're saying this right now, EBO just put David Dahl on the trade block, calling him, quote, the new Roberto Hernandez, except Major League ready. So I don't know about that claim. But
I'm not going to get into Roberto Hernandez anymore.
Yeah, I think we've talked about him to death. I know how much it hurts you, but I'm glad that his value has been validated because the Rays like him. So I told you Roberto's a good player. But yeah, I think that he landed in a good spot, and excited to see what Dahl does. But like you said, we talked about him a lot. So let's talk about the other ad drops here. Do you want to go into your Reds ad drop?
Yeah, I can talk about that briefly. It's not super interesting, but basically the Reds no longer have Raisel Iglesias as their closer, which means Amir Garrett is lined up to get presumably the bulk of save opportunities for a team that could maybe win 80 games next year. I'm not the most confident in them at the current moment. But hey, if Amir Garrett gets 30 saves, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, and in general, I think my bullpen has a lot of saves guys between him and Liam Hendricks, and apparently Jake Diekman's the front runner to save in Oakland. So I'm currently pretty excited.
Absolutely. No, I thought that was a good move for you. I think a good chunk of the offseason for relievers is really figuring out who's going to have what role and kind of adding them, kind of beforehand so that you could kind of extract that maximum value. So I think you made a good move there, especially if Iglesias moving. I think, like you said, some of these Reds guys like Garrett could really be the big winners there. Two more things I'll add here, just on, since we've talked about all these other players. I don't get why I like Lorenzo Cain. He's 35. I don't get why Andrew would want him over Profar. That's who he added to cut him. And to speak on Nick Wittgren briefly, I think that he has a solid chance of closing or being the eighth inning guy for Cleveland next year with Hand gone. And, kind of given the fact that Cleveland's not really going to be adding anybody. So I think he could be a nice add for someone who's potentially looking to get kind of some saves or holds moving forward.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I expect someone to pick him up. And yeah, anything else?
No, not really.
All right, then. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with Conor Stemme to talk about a big deal that went down just about 2 years ago.
We are now joined by Conor, owner of Off White Sox, here to discuss arguably the biggest trade in league history that occurred 2 years ago. Thanks for coming on, Conor.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Yep. I'll start off here by reading the trade. This occurred about 2 years ago, so we thought it'd be good to talk about it on its 2-year anniversary. Abor Pujols, which was Cam's old name, has agreed to trade Fernando Tatis Jr., Chris Paddack, Hunter Green, Kyle Lewis, Jason Hayward, and Zayn Max's 2019 second-round pick, which turned into, believe it or not, Kyler Murray. That was traded to Conor for Juan Soto, Austin Meadows, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Micker Adolfo, Luis Alexander Basavi, and Erik's 2019 first-round pick, with the condition that if Juan Soto is to be traded from Abor Pujols, Conor, then named Yoan Moncada, has a fair chance to match that offer within a draft pick of compensation. So,
yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that Erik's first-round pick turned out to be Jared Kelenic.
Oh, damn. Yeah, so there you go. That's like that. Those are stud young players all around. I mean, Tatis, Paddack. Lewis just won a Rookie of the Year. Meadows was an All-Star in 2019. We all know what Juan Soto's done. Ke'Bryan Hayes has come up and just been fantastic. But let's start with you, Cam. Kind of what was your thought process behind the trade at the time?
Yeah, I believe, and I may be wrong, that this is something that kind of came about at our winter meetings, the very first time we did that. I was just kind of hoping to acquire Soto. I don't think I was expecting to land a deal for him, but I was just kind of asking on the price because obviously he had just been coming off that incredible rookie year, and he's just a guy I wanted. And obviously I figured Tatis would have to be in the deal to get it done. And it just kind of snowballed and grew. And Austin Meadows ended up being involved in it. And then Chris Paddack is the one guy I was most hesitant to give up, more so than even Tatis and Green, because Paddack was a guy I had discovered during the season. He was kind of rising up prospect boards and striking out everyone and not walking anyone in the Padres minor league system at the time. And I was really hesitant to give him up, and spent the next several months trying to get him back until we were able to at the next trade deadline. I guess the two White Sox prospects I acquired were more to just kind of balance the trade out in terms of only having 12 prospect spots at the time. And yeah, the first round pick turned out to be Jared Kalanick, which I wouldn't trade for the world either. So overall, I think it was a ballsy trade that we both did a good job with.
Yeah, absolutely. Connor, you want to speak from your perspective a bit? I mean, I'm sure it was a hard decision to give up Juan Soto.
Yeah, so I think on my end, like Juan Soto, I got in the first trade ever in this league, and I pretty much got him as a throw-in just because it was Trey Turner for Brendan Rodgers and Juan Soto. So obviously, I value him very, very highly, and because he had a great season and was super young. But because I didn't really give much up for him, I felt like I was okay with trading him for this massive package of Tatis, Paddock, and Green, and Lewis, and everything. And then I think on my end, the only other person who I really cared to at the time to give up was Austin Meadows. Like, the two White Sox prospects were very low on the list, and I just traded for them when I was getting all the White Sox players. And then Brian Hayes has traded places 15 times or something like that. So I knew I could probably get him back. And the first-round pick, it definitely turned out good in Cam's favor, but it was a first-round pick at the time, and we didn't really know how to value those picks at that time. So I think it was definitely, as Cam said, a good move on both sides.
No, definitely. I mean, hard to argue with both of you getting, I would say, a top 3 dynasty asset on each side here. And just like even these secondary pieces are on both sides are guys who have broken out. I mean, Paddock and Lewis have had a lot of success going to Cam in that deal. And Austin Meadows, I mean, was fantastic in 2019. And Brian Hayes showed a lot in 2020. I'll go back to Cam here. Austin Meadows, Brian Hayes, and the White Sox prospects are no longer on your roster. Have you regretted moving any of those guys?
Yeah, Meadows was a guy I needed to send to get the Bueller and Wheeler deal done with Alex last 4th of July. So I'm not regretting it too much, even though he's turned out really well with your team. Brian Hayes, I believe he's a guy that's just bounced around a ton. I traded him along with Royce Lewis in the Syndergaard deal, which I think kind of looks bad for me now since Syndergaard doesn't have a lot of value. And both Royce Lewis and Brian Hayes seem to. And AJ Buck. Wow, God, that was really, I don't want to blame all my bad moves on Duncan, but that was definitely a Duncan move. And the two White Sox prospects, they were mostly throw-ins, so I didn't have any sort of need to hold on to them. I had previously sent Adolfo to Connor at the previous trade deadline, so he was a guy I thought was a little expendable, and I later cut him. And M-SABR, I believe, I sent just as kind of a throw-in in the deal where I acquired Alec Baum. And that was mostly just, in both trades, he was there to just kind of fill out the minor league rosters for both teams. Here's the guy that we would be cutting. So, and as far as those two guys go, I don't have any regrets getting rid of them. But Meadows was necessary to give up, and Hayes was definitely a bit iffy.
No, definitely. You have to give up good players to get good players. I think this trade is like very indicative of that, as is the other Austin Meadows trade that you made. One more side note, it is kind of interesting looking at this. I just kind of assumed that the two White Sox prospects were going to Connor, but it's kind of funny to see Connor trading away White Sox prospects after all of the I think we added up in the trivia last week. Connor has 11 White Sox on his roster right now. It's like over 20% of his roster. So interesting to see him sending them out. Let's look at this from the other side, though. For Connor here, the only player he has left in that deal, interestingly enough, is Jason Hayward. So that obviously means that Tatis, Paddock, Hunter Green, and Kyle Lewis have all been traded away. I'm sure you don't really regret giving away Kyler Murray because he didn't actually play, but any regrets with kind of moving the other 4 guys away, Connor?
Yeah, so first going off Kyler Murray, that was actually the Jose Peraza deal as well. So at the time, that seemed like a great steal, but obviously both players didn't really do much either. But then Tatis, I traded for Juan DeFranco and a bunch of others. Juan DeFranco I traded to Erik. But Tatis, I don't really mind giving up that much. Like, obviously he's great and would be great on my team, but I got a huge package for him at the time. I think the biggest player I regret giving up was Kyle Lewis, because Kyle Lewis, unless I'm missing the trade, I think I dropped him, which was a very bad drop on my part, given what he's done. So I think he's the one I regret giving up the most.
Kyle Lewis, I mean, won Rookie of the Year this year. So obviously he is someone that's on the rise there. I think along with Kelenic and Julio Rodriguez, I think that Mariners outfield is shaping up to look pretty good in the long term. So definitely one of those stinking cuts. I know that quite a few teams in this league, especially early on, I feel like when we didn't know that much about prospects, dropped some guys that we're kind of regretting now. So really interesting to kind of see, how that path kind of developed.
Yeah, and it's also tough when you only had 12 prospect slots early on and you had to cut Kyle Lewis or Yordan Alvarez or one of those guys, and there really was not a lot of room for some of these guys sometimes, even if they did turn out great.
Yeah, because I think soon after that was the draft, so then we had to and I think I had a few extra picks in that draft, so I had to cut a bunch of guys. I think that's probably when I cut him.
Yeah, thank God we expanded to 20 roster minor league spots. I think that's been a really big thing for the league. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I know this year's the first year we haven't expanded the minor league rosters at draft time, but I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't another expansion to like 25 at some point over the next couple of years, just the way we kind of do things in this league. But I wanted to ask about this condition here, upon the condition that if Juan Soto is to be traded from aboard Pujols, Yoel Moncada has a fair chance to match that offer within a draft pick of compensation. So I guess a two-part question. One, do you all remember exactly how or why that condition came about? And then a second question for Cam. Do you ever expect that condition to be relevant, aka do you ever expect to trade Juan Soto?
I certainly don't remember putting that trade condition in. I'm not sure if Connor does. I don't really remember how it came about, but I can't imagine myself trading Juan Soto anytime in the next several years unless something huge changes.
Yeah, I don't exactly remember putting that in there. Obviously, I probably just wanted the chance to get him back if Cam traded him. But I don't remember the conversation about that. But if Kim does trade him, I would definitely try and match it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I would definitely, if I knew I had the option to match an offer for Juan Soto, I would definitely try to match it. I feel like that this is going to be one of those things that like will hit like 2035 or like 2038 or whatever. Like Soto's like 37 or 38 and he's on the decline, and Cam's finally like, you know what? I'm going to move him for like a third round pick. And Connor's like, I'll give you a slightly better third round pick. And I'm bam. You two got a Juan Soto deal. I'm really hoping that this condition is like relevant in 20 years because that would be hilarious to me.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised it didn't start any sort of trend of just kind of giving someone the option to match trade offers with a little bit of incentive there. But certainly, the league certainly would have been a lot different if maybe guys like Tatis, who've been traded multiple times, or Torres or Acuna, guys who've been bounced around, if they had that option.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the fun of this league is that you just never know who's going to get traded. Nobody's off limits, except for Yoel Moncada. I think the most untouchable player in this league. But one more question.
Julio Ramos, apparently.
Julio Ramos. I still don't get what Ruth, Vic, and Nick are doing with him, just like what the end goal is. But I guess since we have you, Connor, I know that you have kind of recently finished up with the semester and have some more free time. Do you expect to see maybe some more trades coming down the pipeline? I know you mentioned acquiring some outfielders here, but you expect to maybe see some more trades coming through?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I finished up actually yesterday, but I had some free time last weekend and I started started some conversations, and this weekend I have nothing at all. So I'll definitely be starting to put some real deals out and trying to acquire some more pieces to improve my team to start hopefully competing sooner rather than later.
Definitely. I know Cam and I really like the Barrios deal. I thought it was a big signal that, you're ready to kind of move on from the rebuild and start to compete. And I won't put words in Cam's mouth here, but I think that you have one of the rising young rotations in this league with Giolito and Barrios and you got Kopech and McKenzie this offseason and Nate Pearson. So that's not a rotation I really want to go up against over the next couple of years. So excited to see you finally moving towards competition here. Do you have any other questions, Cam?
No, I think that's all I have. It was a pleasure to make this trade with you, Conor, and I think it did work out really well for both of us. And these are the types of crazy trades that make this league a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally agree. The first time I looked back on it, when I was doing the first trade tree I did, I'm like, wow, this deal was awful. But then the more I expanded the trade tree, I'm like, all right, this deal actually kind of worked out for me. So yeah, it was a pleasure doing business, and who knows, maybe we'll do a Juan Soto deal again in the future.
Maybe the distant future.
I pray it happens. So yeah, thanks so much. And coming up next, we will have our offseason preview with Erik McKeen, owner of the Stanton Stranglers, and we'll answer the big question of, are Erik and Cam going to get into a massive fight live on air? So stay tuned.
More than that, you know there's nothing more than that. Tell me one thing more than that.
All right, we'd like to welcome back onto the show Stanton Stranglers owner Erik McKeen. And the two of you have something to announce. Is that right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we are announcing our Dynasty Hockey team name. For those of you who aren't in the hockey league, me, Erik, and Zane are try-owning a team. None of us know anything about hockey, but we have won all 5 Dynasty championships between baseball and football and have combined for all 10 finals appearances. So we like to think we have the fantasy skills. And, already we've traded for 2 top 5 picks. So very excited for that. But we felt we needed to get a team name that really captured the essence of us. And kudos to Zane for coming up with this team name. We will be Every Villain is Lemons. That is the name of the bad guy group in SpongeBob when Barnacle Boy decided to join the bad guys and leave Mermaid Man. They became a group of 3 there, kind of like us, and they wreaked havoc all over Bikini Bottom, just like we will wreak havoc all over the league. So we'll post a link to the video of it too. It's one of the better episodes of SpongeBob, I feel like. So Every Villain is Lemons will be the name of our team.
All right, so really leaning into the villain angle, I see, right from day one.
Yeah, I really want the target on our back.
Well, it'll be interesting because, you've already ripped a few teams off of high picks, but at the same time, you don't know anything about hockey, but the picks you're making will be the easy picks to make at the very least. So I don't know.
We've done a little bit of research so far, and I'm sure we'll be quick learners.
We'll see.
But speaking of high draft picks, we're doing Erik's offseason preview here. Do you want to, let's jump in here with a high draft pick that you recently traded here. Cam and I gave our thoughts earlier on the podcast, but you recently traded the 3rd overall pick to Benintendi's Chicken Tendies for Royce Lewis. Cam loves this deal for you. I'm a little more skeptical. What was kind of your thinking behind doing this deal?
Yeah, I didn't realize so many people would be down on Royce, given he's the 7th prospect on both major lists. But anyways, yeah, I was probably leaning, assuming it's Torque and Austin Martin for the first 2, I was probably going to go Zach Veen with the 3rd pick. Alex reached out about the third pick. He said, "What would it take?" I said it would probably have to be a really good prospect, and he said, "Would it have to be Royce?" And then I thought about it, and I basically decided I liked Royce better than Zach Veen.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I talked earlier on the show, but my assumption was that Garrett Crochet would be 2 and Austin Martin would be 3. But either way, I like Royce Lewis better than Veen or Martin.
Yeah, and the other big thing is Lewis should be up this year and hopefully contributing. We'll see, and the other two might take a few years. So if I want to go like lean into the win now thing, like I should be, then I think that was a good trade.
That's true. Sahil, do you have any sort of rebuttal?
Yeah, I mean, I think I go pretty into it in the first part of our podcast, so I'm not gonna really dive in too deep here. But I guess my question for you, Erik, is: do you have any concerns about the numbers he's posted in high A and double A, where the OBP's not getting over 300, and he's not hitting too many home runs? I mean, he's still in a decent number of bases, but does the performance worry you at all? I mean, I know he's got all the talent in the world, but I feel like at some point you got to start seeing some results.
Yeah, probably just a little bit, but yeah, he was the number 1 pick. He's got a lot of skills, high baseball IQ. He's really, really fast. He gets a 70 grade speed from MLB. And also he was kind of working through an injury in that 2019 season. So, I mean, I don't know how he did at the alt camp this year. Hopefully he did well, but yeah, I'm just banking on the talent that will fall through.
That's fair. And I mean, I think, like I said earlier in the podcast, I think a lot of this just depends on how you value Royce Lewis. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this trade. But let's move on here from Royce Lewis. We've had you on the podcast a couple of times, so you've talked a bit about your other big acquisition, Jose Ramirez, but you've made quite a few other moves as well. How are you feeling about your team now compared to the beginning of the offseason? We all know you didn't make the playoffs this year, so obviously, you really wanted to kind of make a push this year to get back into a championship caliber team. So do you think you've accomplished that goal, or do you think more moves need to be made? Where are you at with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Jose Ramirez deal was definitely a good starting point for my quest to like get back into the playoffs next year. And then when Zane approached me about like, hey, you're interested in Sixto, and then we kind of made that deal happen. I like that deal a lot because I got like 3 really good pieces in Sixto, Yaz, and Merrifield, and then I ended up trading Yaz for Voit, and I'm a big guy on Voit. So, and also getting Plezak, I'm a really big fan of him because he walked only 6 guys in 55 innings, which is crazy. And yeah, the Teoscar for Soler deal, I'm a big fan of because I think basically they're the same guy, but Teoscar can steal a little bit. And the Leody Taveras deal, I think he could steal a lot of bases as well. So, yeah, honestly, like I said in the previous podcast, trading away Julio Rodriguez was really hard, but to get a top guy back and help me prepare for the playoffs next year was totally worth it.
Absolutely. Do you feel like you have built a team that's capable of winning a championship? Again, obviously you won the first 2 years before kind of falling down this year. Do you think you're back at that level?
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem was, I know Cam's going to hate this, but the process. Like, the first 2 years, I started out with a team, and my team by, like, playoff time was, like, probably nowhere near what it was because, I like to make pickups and stuff throughout the season, and I like to, like, sell guys for picks that I think I won't, like, have any use for, but I think are, like, still kind of valuable. And with the short 6 weeks, I mean, I'm not going to blame it all on the process because I know I didn't have some guys, like, I didn't know Baez was going to plummet that fast, but I thought he would be decent, and who knew Glaber would plummet or not do that well either. But yeah, anyway, in a longer season, I know not all my hitters are going to like pan out. I know some of them won't, but I think a lot of them have a good chance of panning out. And if I don't, I have a really good farm system. Like I think 5 or 6 of them should be up this year. Not all of them are hitters, but I think a couple of them will be, like Royce, for instance, and maybe Edwin Rios will get a full-time job potentially. But anyway, so my team come playoff time should be nothing like Well, hopefully it will be like kind of similar, but I don't think it will be anything like when my team is at the beginning. But yeah.
Definitely. And I think one of the, I guess, perceptions that some people in this league, I won't name names,
I know where this is going.
they seem to think that your offense is a little bit kind of shaky here. You know, you're starting guys such as Dylan Moore, Eric Hosmer, Cole Calhoun, Leody Taveras, Austin Slater, Mitch Garver had a down year. So I know you got some studs in there, Voigt, Merrifield, and Jose Ramirez are all great bats, as well as Giancarlo Stanton, if he could stay healthy. But do you have any concerns about this offense? Or, do you think that a lot of these guys that I named are really even going to be on the roster, like long term, or do you kind of project them just as kind of like fill-ins for some of these prospects now, and there might be guys that you're just cutting by the end of April or May?
Well, it just depends on the guy. Let's go one by one with all the guys you named off. I know Garver was one of them, right?
Yep.
Garver, he was so good 2 years ago and he only played like 20 games. I honestly am a little worried that Jeffers will cut into the playing time, but I'm just hoping Garver could be like anything close to what he was 2 years ago. And if not, then hopefully Sam Huff or Luis Campusano could fill in, or I could pick someone off waivers. So I'm not counting too much on Garver, but it would be really nice if he could get back to form from 2 years ago. And then Austin Slater, I'm not really counting on keeping him the whole year unless he does something good. He played really, really well in his limited playing time last year, so I'm hoping some of it carries over to next year. But if not, then I can just cut him. And then Leody, we talked about a lot in the chat. He was on pace for 20 homers and 40 steals this year. I think that's definitely within reach. Who are the other guys? Oh, Dylan Moore. I was really excited when I picked him up. And the reason I think, he was on pace for 36 homers, 53 steals over the course of the season. I don't think that's going to happen, obviously. But one thing I did like is that he made a swing change prior to this year. So I know that, and his StatCast numbers backed up what he did. So I'm hoping he can carry that into next year. Oh, Cole Calhoun, he was a stud, aside from stolen bases because he doesn't steal. He was a stud in almost every category aside from OBP. And his career OBP was a lot higher than his OBP this year. So, and he had an insanely low BABIP. I think it was 220 or something. So I expect that to be higher next year. Oh, and he walks a shit ton, so that's really good.
Yeah, look, if you're really into those guys, you seem to have the secret formula here. It's won you 2 championships, so I'm not going to doubt it. And I think you have a great point that you do have a lot of depth in the farm system that can come up and replace some of these guys. And I also don't think it would be terribly hard if you needed to replace someone like a Slater or even a Dylan Moore, down the road, that you could go and find those replacements. But let's shift here to your rotation. I personally think this is the most exciting part of your team.
Just one real thing real quick about the other thing. Honestly, I might regret that not trading for Hyunjin Ryu, but power speed guys are so hard to find that I'm willing to bet that Moore could keep some of it up. Probably not what he was on pace for this year, 30, 50, but maybe 20, 30 would be really, really, really valuable. And guys like Wander Franco should come up, as well as Royce Lewis, possibly Michael Bush. Hopefully can contribute for my team this year as well.
Yeah, I personally think Edwin Rios is a really big sleeper. Any thoughts on Hyunjin Ryu for Dylan Moore, Cam?
Well, I think I've said this before. I only offered that just kind of facetiously, thinking obviously he doesn't value Dylan Moore that high, but I want to see what the reaction is. And then I guess you did value Dylan Moore that high.
Yep.
Damn.
And it's not like Hyunjin Ryu is an exciting guy. I know he has really, really low ERAs, but he's kind of old and he doesn't rack up as much strikeouts as in typical ace would.
Yeah, and he gets hurt quite a bit.
He's
Sorry, Cam. I guess
second best ERA of the last 3 years. I'm not.
Yeah, but also a big thing that played into it as like what our transition was. I really, really, really like my pitching staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like your pitching staff a lot too, and we can go into that a little bit.
Yeah, I told Cam this. If my hitting was better than my pitching, I would have like tried to make that deal happen. Actually,
I could see that. I I definitely agree that the pitching is probably the biggest strength of your team here. I mean, Glasnow, Burns, Plesac, Lopez, and Sixto is like a great young top five, and there's a lot of other interesting arms here. Is there one player in your rotation or your pitching staff as a whole that you are maybe the most excited about?
I mean, I was really, really stoked to get Plesac, but just the sleeper that you didn't name, I'm really excited about John Means because in 2019 he averaged like 93 on his fastball, and in 2020 it was 95. And he had a whip under 1 this year. He had an insanely good end to the year with like a double-digit strikeouts, I think 2 or 3 games of his last couple. So, the first year he had a really good changeup. And then the second year, his fastball increased 2 miles per hour, like I said, but his changeup kind of lasted a little bit. So I'm hoping he can put those two together next year.
But yeah, so we've talked about how great your rotation is with these guys, and we didn't even get a chance to mention guys like Corbin Burns or Drew Smiley, who's a high upside guy. The bullpen, I only see 3 relievers on your roster. Devin Williams is obviously great. Tyler Duffy had a phenomenal season in terms of holds. And then Michael Lorenzen, interesting ad, and he wants to be in the rotation. But anyway, do you plan on adding to your bullpen? I know you punted saves last year, and no one on your roster had any save. No one on your current roster had a single save last year. Do you plan on adding a guy to hopefully flip saves a couple weeks out of the year?
Nope, I'm going to punt saves the whole year like I normally did. And I like my situation right now with having both Lorenzen and TJ Antone because I feel like either of them, if they make the rotation, they might be able to do something there, or they could be good holds guys if they don't end up making the rotation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm a big fan of what TJ Antone was able to do this year. I don't know if I expect him to be in many hold situations, but he could work his way right into the number 4 or 5 spot in the Reds rotation. And I had him briefly, and he's a guy I like.
Yeah, very excited about his potential.
Yeah, and let's kind of transition into the upcoming draft. We already talked about how you traded out of pick number 3, but you do have 2 more picks in the first, as well as 1 in the second and 2 in the third. Do you plan on kind of holding on to the picks you have, or are you kind of flexible with hearing offers for 7 and 8 and maybe flipping them to someone else?
Yeah, I put 7 and 8 on the black like a week ago, I think. I got a couple offers, but nothing that I really liked. So it's probable that I'm going to keep them, and I'm stoked to get a couple of top guys from this draft as well. And 14, unless I get a good offer, I'm probably going to keep. 25 and 28, I'm probably going to move, but we'll see.
Definitely something that you can wait on, especially those later round picks, because who knows who's going to be there at 25 and 28. I know you're picking right ahead of me at 28, so you'll probably be taking a guy I like. But with these 5 picks, I know this year, for the first time ever, we're going to be choosing, I don't know what your word for it, Sahil, was, but kind of the winner of the draft.
Yeah, it was I came up with a good name for this, like the Kyler Murray Best Draft Award after maybe the best draft pick in league history.
Yeah, but you're presumably the front runner for this award, I would say, with EBO having 4 first rounders being another team in contention. I guess you've got high expectations for this draft. Do you have kind of a plan for type of guys you want to target?
Yeah, briefly, I was actually going to pick Kyler Murray if Zane and Max didn't, but I ended up getting Xavier Edwards with that pick, so I think that worked out.
Much better.
But yeah, I don't have a specific hitting or pitching plan with 7 or 8. I'm just going to take the best guys available at those picks, and like 14 as well. But, I like a lot of the top guys in this draft. And with 25 and 28, I have no idea. I think I'm going to try to trade both of them or maybe just one of them, but we'll see what happens.
So one thing I wanted to ask both of you is how have you all felt about this newly developing rivalry between you two? It's been one of the more, I think, interesting developments in the league, as Cam doesn't really approve of the process, and I know Erik has some strong opinions about Cam's team as well.
I mean, I should clarify. What my issue is, I mean, we all know that Erik is going to find guys he likes in the middle of the season, but what I'm saying is those guys aren't on his roster right now. We don't know who they are right now. Maybe they'll help him reach the playoffs, but you can't say right now that he has a top 4 roster because you think that maybe he's going to find guys later on, and that seems to be what people are saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is I think my hitters are good and Cam does not. So, and we won't know until like 4 months from now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. And I think your hitters are guys who were on waivers in September.
Well, some of them were, but
A lot of them.
like
Not Jose Ramirez, but
yeah. I mean, like Chris Taylor, he was pretty good. I think he'll be a nice fill-in until Wander and or Royce Lewis comes up. And you know how I feel about Cole Calhoun and, you know, Jesse Winker. I mean, Cam, as a Reds fan, how do you feel about Winker?
well, I feel like Taylor and Winker were guys who were on my roster in August, and I decided that I didn't need them anymore. But Winker, my Reds fan specifically, it fully depends on whether or not the NL uses the DH this year. Because if they have a DH, I think he can be a contributor. But if they don't, then I have no idea where they find the playing time for him.
Yeah, I fully expect the DH to be there. I think it's just a bargaining chip right now. But anyway, even if the DH is not there, he was so good last year. I know it was just like a couple week stretch where he like hit a bunch of homers, but he had a 90 or 92 mile per hour exit velo. He had a 383 xWOBA. He had a 15% walk rate. I mean, those are studly stats.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been capable of doing that. He was a top 40 prospect at his peak. And I think if he gets that consistent playing time, he even was able to hit against lefties this year, which he had never been able to do. So I think there is a place for him.
Yeah. I'm not expecting like studly stats. If it doesn't work out, I can cut him, but I'm really, really hoping he gets consistent playing time, and I expect the DH to be there next year.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think overall, I just like to say it's nice to kind of be considered a rival and have it be considered that one of the top teams in the league is my rival, as opposed to just kind of, I don't know, fighting for the last spot.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a lot of fun to have a rival. I mean, I kind of considered ABO and Sahil my rivals from previous years, but to have like a vocal one kind of is really, really fun.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess Ruthvik was kind of my rival earlier on, just because we both kind of had similar trajectories within how well our team was. And we were both kind of, at least last year and early this year, on the fringes. But yeah, I agree. It's nice to have a vocal rival.
Absolutely. So one last question for you, Erik. We've been asking everyone if there is one player on another team that you'd be interested in trading for that maybe you haven't had the opportunity this offseason to inquire on. Do you have a guy who fits that category?
Yeah, as soon as you guys did the first season preview, I was going through like all the teams trying to figure out who I didn't acquire on, but who I would want. And one interesting name came to mind was Sandy Alcantara.
Oh.
And, you know, the Marlins are my second favorite team. And during the startup draft, on the last like 10 rounds, I drafted exclusively Marlins and Tigers. And Sandy Alcantara was one of them. And I must have dropped him at some point, probably because he wasn't doing well then, but he looks to be a pretty good pitcher nowadays. So I was thinking I might inquire about him.
Interesting. Who owns Alcantara?
Daniel and Alex.
Huh.
Maybe a little more difficult, but
Yeah.
yeah, he had a phenomenal season this year. His projections look solid for next year. And yeah, great choice.
Yeah.
Anything else, Cam, before we wrap up here?
No, I think I'm all set.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for coming on, Erik. Hopefully we'll see some more news from you this offseason, and hopefully we'll see you back in the playoffs.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me again.
Haven't you